there are doctors out there who are sexual predators. And this is something that's a big deal to me. And, I do surgery on patients all the time, especially females. And, one thing I always do, when I take a female back for surgery, I shake her husband's hand, I look him in the eyes, and I let him know, I tell him, I'm going to take care of your wife while she's back here. And I do, I'm really keen about protecting my patients when they get to once they get to the OR, once they go to sleep. They cannot protect themselves. To do these surgeries, hip surgeries, things like that, you have to expose the patient. You have to expose the patient to get your lines in. The patient will be topless, the genitals will be exposed. You have to put catheters in their bladder. For females to put the catheter in their bladder, you have to open their legs wide open. And I mean, they are as exposed as they can be. And I try to get men out of the room during this process, people who are not critical to that step of putting that Foley catheter in while that patient is exposed. I want them out of the room. You don't need to be there. But it's an issue. If you read the news or watch the news, maybe you've seen some things out there where anesthesiologists were putting women to sleep and then touching on their bodies and things like that. So it's it's unfortunate, that there are people out there who would do these things. And like I said, you don't know who these people are until they get caught. But hopefully there's not too many people out there like this. I don't know the answer to this. I think about it a lot. When I go back with the patient, I am their protector. I mean, I'm protecting that patient like it's my daughter, like it's my mother on that table. I've had to check people on a lot of reasons. Sometimes people will say something off the wall. If a patient is obese, they'll make a fat joke. And I tell them, hey, we're not doing that here. I don't like anything inappropriate happening in my OR. But I don't know the answer to, stopping women, other patients from being abused while they're asleep. I think most people are pretty good people. Most people are not going to stand by and let things like that happen. But, so we all have to be advocates. The nurses, the techs, anesthesiologists, everybody must be aware about the potential of sexual abuse of patients when they go in for surgery and they are asleep. Sometimes I think, this would be costly if we hired, just tons of patient advocates, and it's their sole job to be by that patient's side and go into the OR and just, be a watchdog and just, hey, you don't need to be here for this, get out of the room. Or, I think we need to come up with some policies on this. Well, we need to have some specific policies in place to protect women, other patients when they go back for surgery, because like I said, there's some offenders out there. Okay. But that's all I had to say, y'all. Have a good weekend. Peace out.